Hey everybody, this is another part of the series of the power of the name, and the only thing is we're doing it differently this time. I'm going to start off by talking about Daniel 11:5 because it sort of ties in into the name we're going to be discussing, which is Enoch. Enoch was born in 622 AC. He died, well, actually, he didn't die. He was taken up uh, heaven with God in 987 AC. So 622 AC to 987 AC. His name defined is dedicated, trained, famous bearer, or bearer. Uh, So, let's go to this rise of Islam in 570 AD. Discuss that first. And also read Daniel 11:5. So there's I'm going to be using my King James version for this, so give me a few seconds to get to my page. Alright, Daniel 11:5. And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. It kind of ties into the name dedicated, trained, famous bearer in that instance right there, whenever it talks about that and the king of the south. They're talking about a famous bearer. And the rise of Islam, we'll see who that famous bearer is. It also says that the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So let's see what it's talking about here. Uh, Another way of translating this comes in the NIV version of the Bible. It says the king of the south will become strong, but one of his commanders will become even stronger than he and will rule his own kingdom with great power. So maybe that version will sort of make a little bit more sense to you if you prefer that, because it makes sense to me whenever you say it like that. And plus, you can see that they both pretty much mean the same thing. I'm also going to read for you the Daniel 11 verse 6 as well, because they tie in together, and then I'm going to be discussing both 5 and 6. So let's read 6 too. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. So it says, in the days, in the end of years, they shall join themselves together. Some people join together by marriage. We'll see how that ties in to this. And the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. We're going to discuss that. And she shall not retain the power of an arm, neither shall he stand. So neither of them are going to retain their power. But she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. They'll all be given up. So let's start discussing this. First, we're going to do the Daniel 5. This verse describes the origin of Islam, what we're talking about here. And the reason is because the king of the south is Muhammad's empire. It's called the Rashidun Caliphate, which originated in the Arabian Peninsula. The term caliphate is the Muslim word for empire or dynasty. The leader is called the caliph, or caliph, however you wish to say it, which literally means successor to the messenger of God. You remember that video I talked about the vicar of Christ, which means to stand in place of God? Well, apparently this also is very similar and means to be a successor to the messenger of God. This one isn't a messenger, isn't God that it's talking about, though. It's successor to the messenger of God. So there's a slight difference. So in other words, whoever the first messenger was, which was probably considered Gabriel, I guess, Gabriel the angel, now this person is the next messenger in line. And to me, I don't really see the point of that, considering that the first one's still around. You know what I mean? Anyway, continuing. There are four successors to Muhammad in the Rashidun Caliphate: Abu Bakr, his father-in-law; Umar, Uthman, and Ali, his son-in-law. Many thought that Ali should have been the first, so a mob revolted and then killed Uthman and replaced him with Ali. The commander who became even stronger was Muawiyah. Remember, we read the verse and it said the king of the south will become strong, but one of his commanders will become even stronger than he and will rule his own kingdom with great power. So Muawiyah is the one that becomes even stronger than Ali. So you have Ali and Muawiyah, the governor of Syria under Uthman. He did not accept Ali's claim to power and started his own kingdom from Damascus. He fought with Ali for the remaining control and eventually won. That is a quick summary of this verse. And well, but since Islam had such an impact on the world throughout history and the rest of Daniel 11, we're going to discuss Muhammad and his successors one by one. So here's the whole story. As I said earlier, the Arabs who started Islam have a direct connection with the Israelites because Abraham was the... Actually, I didn't say this. This is what the other person said that did this website. Abraham was the father of many nations. The connection is explained in Genesis. Abraham, Sarah had been in Canaan for about 10 years and still childless. Then Sarah convinced Abraham to sleep with her handmaiden or maidservant, Hagar, so they might have a family that way. That wasn't uncommon practice. It was actually very common in those days, but it was God's plan for his chosen nation. Nevertheless, Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, who was technically firstborn, and Muslims believe that Muhammad is the direct descendant of Ishmael. Some dispute that claim, but it doesn't matter because 14 years later, Sarah has Isaac. Afterwards, God confirmed to Abraham that his everlasting covenant was with Isaac in Genesis 17:19. And from Isaac's descendants, Jesus the Messiah was born. So, yeah, there you go. Almost 6 centuries after Jesus, Muhammad was born in Mecca, Saudi Arabia in 570 AD. He worked as a merchant and sometimes a shepherd, but was discontented with life in Mecca. He often retreated to a cave in the surrounding mountains for meditation and reflection, and it was there at age 40 that he claimed to have received his first revelations from God. So, this guy seems pretty dedicated. Let's see if he's trained. Obviously, Muhammad was familiar with the Bible, so he is trained. Ah, because Abraham, Moses, and Jesus are regarded as prophets in Islam. In fact, Jesus is mentioned in the Quran 25 times. Yet Muslims claim that the Bible was corrupted over time and Muhammad corrected it. Ooh, not supposed to do that. He's a dedicated person to this because he's trying to correct stuff. He's trained in biblical writings, which is why he's trying to twist the words. And he's a famous bearer. Everybody knows who Muhammad is, or most people do. So, however, if God is all-powerful and all-knowing as Muslims and Christians believe, why would he allow his holy word to become corrupted? And anyway, this starts getting into this guy's opinion that wrote this. So we're going to skip over that and go on to Enoch now. Enoch in 622 AC. We're going to discuss 622 AD and Muhammad's dream. So let's see what happened. In 622 AD, after preaching in Mecca for about 12 years without much acceptance, Muhammad had his famous dream. Famous bearer. There you go. Or vision. At that time, Muhammad's tribe was in control of the Kaaba, a religious shrine containing hundreds of idols. The idols represented Arabian tribal gods and other religious figures, including Jesus and Mary. Muhammad said he was resting in the Kaaba when the archangel Gabriel brought him the winged steed. I want you to remember this. You heard it here. Barak. The winged steed Barak. I'm going to read this whole thing again. Muhammad said he was resting in Kaaba when the archangel Gabriel brought him the winged steed Barak. That's interesting. Let's look at what Barak is defined as in Hebrew. So copy and paste. It's minus Google paste in Hebrew. It means lightning. Interesting. Now let's look up Barak in Bible. Alright, so then we find Muhammad claimed he rode Barak, Muhammad's spirit guide claiming to have ascended to heaven. We find the same reference to Lucifer embodying a man in Isaiah 14. And the quote is, "I will ascend into heaven." Muhammad already claimed to have ascended to heaven in the Isra wa al-Miraj. It is likely that the Mahdi, who comes in the spirit of Muhammad, will also make the same claim. And it says, "I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." Muhammad already claimed to possess a position that is far above all angels or stars. "I will also sit on the mount of the congregation of the farthest sides of the north." The Mahdi, or the Antichrist, is said to rule from Pergamum, Revelations 2:12 through 13, which Christ proclaimed would be the future seat of Satan. This is on the sides of the northern lands, Asia Minor and Turkey. "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds." This declaration is essentially a repeat of the first proud declaration, "I will be like the Most High." Both Muhammad and Mahdi have given themselves, or have been ascribed, titles that belong to God alone. Even in this supposed ascension, God says, "For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven." God says it's a lie, that this Lucifer-possessed man believed in his heart while it wasn't even true. Even the Barak, which Muhammad supposedly rode to heaven, stems from the word Brak, B-R-Q, which means lightning bolt or glowing light. Muslims love the name. U.S. President Barack stems from the same root word, Brak. The Bible describes Lucifer as burning like a torch or lamp, Revelations 8:10. This is exactly what Quran describes Allah as, a lamp. Allah in the Quran dedicates chapter Al-Nur, the light, as the most significant description of Allah. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. A likeness of his is as a niche in which is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass, and the glass is as it were a brightly shining star. All this can be found Quran 24:35 through 36. It goes on a little bit further. I'm going to sort of just skip by a little bit. "And peacock of all angels and of the dwellers of the heavenly realm, he is dressed and adorned with the cloaks of light." This lightning bolt described by Jesus also fits Muhammad. "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." Luke chapter 10, verse 18. Interesting. The word Lucifer means bearer of light. Famous bearer. Interesting. Talk about prophecy written in names. So let's continue reading what we were reading. "They traveled to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, where Muhammad led a prayer. Then he remounted Barak, circled the heavens, and spoke to earlier prophets such as Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Then Gabriel took him to Allah, God, according to traditions. Allah told Muhammad that Muslims must pray 50 times. Wow, that's a lot. 50 times a day. Supposedly, Moses instructed him to go back several times and asked for reductions. Finally, it was lowered to 5 times a day. So now they're copying as Abraham did for Sodom and Gomorrah. This guy's dedicated for sure. And he seems to be trained in the word, just he's trained in manipulating the word. So I think you're pretty much getting a picture. Following the migration. Okay, let's see. So Muhammad's tribe did not react well when he told them about his journey and the need to expel all the idols in the Kaaba. He was ridiculed to the point that he took his family and initial followers north to Medina. Following the migration to Medina, the Muslims turned to murder, theft, and war to preserve their new religion. Yet Muhammad did not criticize any of these. The first converts were the weaker tribes in Medina who were oppressed by leaders from other clans. The two most powerful leaders taunted and insulted the Muslims, but they were assassinated, which essentially ended the opposition in Medina. Meanwhile, the Meccans seized the property that the Muslims left behind. In retaliation, the Muslims began raiding the caravans from Mecca. They deliberately initiated armed conflict, and Muhammad delivered Quranic verses permitting them to do so. So all this is like a cult. Quran 22 verses 39 and 40. Battles continued for 8 years until the Muslims defeated the Meccans in year 630 AD. I should have wrote that. Muhammad died 2 years later, but by that time, most of the Arabian Peninsula had submitted to the new religion of Islam. Muhammad's only living child was a daughter, Fatima, who had 2 sons, but Muhammad failed to appoint a successor. Remember, we were talking about in verse 6 about a daughter coming into play? So, yeah. Where was I? Alright. A group of followers suggested that his father-in-law, Abu Bakr, take over as caliph. Others thought that Muhammad's son-in-law, Ali, was the only logical choice. After all, he was father to Muhammad's only 2 grandsons. Supposedly, Abu Bakr assumed command while Ali and Fatima were busy with Muhammad's burial. Afterwards, a group went to their house and forced them to swear allegiance to Bakr. Fatima died a few months later, possibly from injuries sustained in the resistance. And believe it or not, there's someone who goes by Abu nowadays that's claiming to be the next caliph in today's year, 2016. And he even issued a order as a supposed caliph that during the month of Ramadan that they are to attack the Western Hemisphere and people of the who else was it? I think it was the Britain. I have to look it up, but there was a major saying to attack people of the Western Empire. And going on, despite the early objections, Abu Bakr was vital to the continuance of Islam. In pre-Islamic Arabia, it was common practice for allegiance to different tribal leaders to end with the death of that leader. Thus, many tribes stopped paying the zakat, or religious levy, that Muhammad had imposed on them. Abu Bakr was instrumental in insisting that they had not submitted to just a simple human leader, but that they had joined the Muslim religious community, which he was now head. Interesting. That started the Ridda Wars, but Bakr was easily some of the tribes. Wait. Bakr was successful in reuniting the Arab tribes with the help of his best general, Khalid. After that, Bakr heard how easily some of the tribes had raided Persian towns in southern Iraq. He responded by moving Khalid's armies north, where they conquered Iraq, Syria, and parts of Persia. Bakr also helped in preserving Muhammad's teachings, collecting parts of the Quran in written form. The second Caliph Umar was never in question because he was named as successor by Abu. During his reign, the Rashidun Caliphate, Rashidun, grew to its peak of power by defeating all the Sassanid Empire and much of the Byzantine Empire. The last two winds. Remember those 4 winds? Now the 4 winds have been defeated. In addition to his military success, Umar is known for having met a rabbi from Yemen named Ka'b Ahbar, A-H-B-A-R. The rabbi converted to Islam and led Umar to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which the Muslims now controlled. They uncovered a rock where they believed Muhammad ascended to heaven in his dream, and also the Ark of the Covenant had been placed. Right or not, Umar built a fence around the rock before he returned home. And then there's the third Caliph, Uthman, who was chosen by a committee. His greatest accomplishment was ordering all the versions of the Quran, oral or written, to be collected so a definitive version could be compiled. After that, his government was accused of mishandling some finances. As a result, some rebels laid siege on his house and killed him. Whether the allegations could be proven or not, the rebels were probably a group who wanted Ali to be Caliph anyway. In 656 AD, Ali became the 4th Caliph when selected by another committee. And he was the father of Muhammad's only 2 grandsons, Hassan and Hussein. Interesting name. In order to manage the military better, Ali moved the capital from Medina to Kufa, a city on the Euphrates about 100 miles south of Baghdad. Besides that, his 5-year reign was plagued by disputes with the Muawiyah, or the powerful commander, in verse 5. Muawiyah, also in verse 6. And he's involved with the Shiites in 669 AD, which we're trying to get to. So, let's see. Muawiyah was the governor of Syria under Uthman, and he started his own kingdom from Damascus called the Umayyad Caliphate, or Umayyyad. The empire was named after his great-grandfather because that was his relation to Muhammad, making them second cousins. Anyway, he controlled the northern kingdom from Damascus, where Ali ruled the southern kingdom from Kufa. They fought numerous battles until Ali was assassinated in 661 AD, ending the Rashidun Caliphate. So the assassination of Ali created a division in Islam, and it still exists today. Essentially, Muawiyah started the Sunni division of Islam, and that makes up about 85% of Muslims, who believe that anyone can serve as caliph. On the other hand, the Shiites believe that only Muhammad's family should have become caliph. They still consider Ali to be the first rightful caliph. The Shiites also believe that certain descendants of Muhammad, known as imams, have special spiritual and political positions in Islam. The largest sect of Shiites, called the Twelvers, believe that there were only 12 imams in history, and the last one will return someday. Similar to the 12 disciples. Make any sense? And the return someday, Jesus being brought back from the grave. They're copying quite a bit. That belief is discussed in verse 36 because it concerns end times. It's not surprising that the hostilities between Sunni and Shiite play a major role in biblical end times. Jesus said, if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. In Mark chapter 3, verse 24. Now, in 622 to 629, which is still in the area of Muhammad's dream, they were recovering a relic. Under the Emperor Heraclius, Byzantium has been quietly regaining its strength. In 622, Heraclius feels ready to take the field against the Persians. His successes are as rapid and spectacular as the reverses of the previous decade. By 624, he has swept through Asia Minor and Armenia to reach Azerbaijan, to the north of Persia, between the Black Sea and the Caspian. And here, as if avenging the violation of the true cross, he destroys one of the most sacred fire temples of Zoroastrianism. And in the next few years, the swings of fortune become even more extreme. In 626, a Persian army reaches the Bosphorus, but fails to cross the water to support a siege of Constantinople's massive walls by a barbarian horde of Slavs and Avars. In 627, a Byzantine army under Heraclius penetrates Mesopotamia's for enough to defeat the Persians at Nineveh. That sounds familiar in the Bible also. And destroy Khosrau's palace at Ctesiphon. From a position of strength, Heraclius negotiates the return of the true cross. He takes it back to be displayed in Constantinople and then personally returns it in 629 to the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. But the relic proves powerless against the next threat to Jerusalem in 638 AD. Now we're finally getting to the official start of Daniel 11, verse 6. Taking a little while, but it's interesting stuff. So, after some years, they will become allies. The daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance, but she will not retain her power, and he and his power will not last. In those days, she will be handed over, together with the royal escort and her father, and the one who supported her. This is the NIV version. So this verse describes the events following the assassinations of Ali and how Muawiyah gained dominance over the Shiites. And in fact, Muawiyah and his son Yazid, Y-A-Z-I-D, were responsible for the deaths of both Muhammad's grandsons. Yet their power didn't last because Yazid's descendants were rejected as caliph. And it's not surprising that an entire verse is dedicated to that period in Islam, because it permanently cemented the division between the Sunni and the Shiites. So that's how it happened. That's the whole point of verse 6. But let's go a little bit further. I'll do the whole story for you. Following the assassination of Ali, Muawiyah was still not considered Caliph of the Muslim Empire because Hassan was appointed that title by his father. Muawiyah urged him to give up the caliphate, but Hassan initially refused. Yet as the armies of Hassan and Muawiyah stood ready for battle, Hassan decided to make a treaty to avoid any more bloodshed. In the agreement, Hassan would receive all the taxes from one province and an annual grant of 2 million dirhams. That explains the first line of verse 6 where it says they will become allies. Then the treaty also stipulated that the caliphate would revert to Hassan or Hussein if they were still alive following Muawiyah's death. So Muawiyah devised a plot to eliminate Hassan because he wished to pass the caliphate to his own son, Yazid. He secretly contacted one of Hassan's wives, Jada, convincing her to poison her husband. Shiites believe that Jada was promised marriage to Yazid and a sum of gold in return for the deed. In 669 AD, with aspirations of power and wealth, she did as she was instructed. Afterwards, she hastened to the court of Muawiyah in Damascus. The Shiite legend does not mention her traveling companions, but she would not have made such a journey alone. As verse 6 suggests, she probably took her royal escort, her father, and the one who supported her. However, once she got there, Muawiyah reneged on his promises and handed her over to another man to marry. Muawiyah died in 680 AD and left the caliphate to Yazid, even though the caliphate should have reverted to Hussein. Yazid immediately demanded allegiance from Hussein, but he refused. Yet, rather than fight, Hussein moved his family farther south, from Medina to Mecca, holy city of the Muslims. The Shiites in Kufa revolted anyway because they saw Yazid as a tyrant who did not keep practices of Islam. They wrote letters to Hussein asking him to join them because they had no Imam, spiritual leader. First, Hussein sent his cousin to check the situation. His cousin wrote back and confirmed a force of 18,000 men who were prepared to overthrow the governor of Kufa upon his arrival. Feeling obligated, Hussein gathered his family and a few followers and headed north with only about 70 men. Meanwhile, Yazid replaced the governor of Kufa with Ubayd, who put down the uprising and beheaded Hussein's cousin. Ubayd traveled south with an army of 30,000 men and met Hussein at Karbala, a city in southern Iraq, and Hussein and the other men were beheaded, and the rest were taken prisoner. To this day, Hussein's grave in Karbala is one of the most sacred and visited sites among Shiite Muslims. Yazid's rule, however, only lasted 3 years because he died in 683 AD. His son was rejected as caliph, and another family line or cousin took over the Umayyad Caliphate. It is sad but ironic that both of Muhammad's grandsons were killed so that Yazid could take the throne. But his dynasty ended in 3 years. That explains the remaining phrase from verse 6, which says, "His power will not last." In 685 AD, Abd Malik became caliph and restored strength to the Umayyad Caliphate. He made Arabic the official language of the empire and had all the important documents translated. He established a postal service and developed the first Muslim currency. And that ends Daniel 11, verse 6. So we saw how all of these events tied to Enoch in 622 AC with the famous bearer, the Barak horse, and how Barak ties into Luke. He's named as Satan, Lucifer, lightning, power of a name, power of a name. Now, if you go to 987 BC, this is when Solomon, King Solomon, David's son, finished the temple structure. Dedicated, trained, famous bearer, Solomon, famous bearer. He was known for being the wisest of all kings. He was dedicated to helping his people. He provided wisdom. He was trained by God. He was given this wisdom by God. He was trained in the art of many things, money handling. Everything ties together. I don't know about you, but anytime I see this much proof within history tying together, and none of this had even happened before the person predicting it predicted it. Daniel predicted all of these things even before AD even happened. He predicted it during his lifeline, which is like 4 or 500 something BC. I, I can't. I'd have to look that up, what his official date of birth was, but it's amazing. You can't get any more proof than this. I mean, everything with these dates, 622 being when the vision happened, and how 622 AC after creation was when Enoch was born, and his name is defined as being dedicated, trained, or famous bearer. A famous bearer was brought into existence at this time. These dates are not coincidence. Nothing in the Bible is coincidence. Think about this before you deny it. Think about this before you turn your mind completely against it. I'm giving you dates and events directly tied to these names and dates in history, in order, specifically. This is one of many of the names that I've already discussed. I don't understand why you can have so much proof, yet so little willingness to listen to it. Anyway, I hope that these videos are causing people to think and possibly change their mind and their view of the Bible, and I'm hoping this gives you the proof that you need that It's not just a bunch of dreams. It's not just a bunch of malarkey. It's not fake. Everything is happening again and again. Every time these dates come up in history, every number in the Bible, if you look up definition of every single name of the people that are mentioned in the Bible, you'll even find a message with that. There are no... Everything has its purpose within the Bible. There's no accident. No accidents whatsoever. It is all... Everyone that was named in birth, every one of those names has a purpose and why they were named that particular name, and why they only mention the dates for these particular people on when they were born, how long they lived, and when they died. No other names, except for these genealogies in the Bible, have the dates, the specific dates. I want you to think about this, really. It's not something to overlook. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you just had your aha moment that will allow you to turn your life over to Christ Jesus. I will pray for you. And I love all of you, and I hope you all try to live as the Lord would have you live. Have a good night or day wherever you're at, and thank you for watching.